Grace be unto you and peace from God our Father and from the Lord Jesus Christ. I was glad when they said to me, "Let us go into the house of the Lord." I'm Father Steve Sellers, and thank you so much for tuning in today for this brief daily message of hope. And my prayer for you today, as always, is that you are able to find hope in the midst of the world that is turning its back on hope. There seems to be far too many people now who are going the way of anger and consternation and concern and confusion and chaos and darkness. Too many people are tuning into that frequency rather than the frequency that God has with us, directly hardwired into our mind. We can make connection with God faster than the fastest Wi-Fi speed on earth. And the connection with Him is always crystal clear. There are never any interruptions, never any services going out of order. God's connection with us is permanent, and we can go to that connection and talk to Him anytime we want to. It's hardwired into us, and it's in that connection that we find joy. Unfortunately, I've been reading a whole lot this past few days about how more and more people are falling into despair of loneliness, especially high school and middle school students, those whose lives really need socializing. That's part of how the preteens and the teens are able to mature into adulthood. They learn how to interact with others. Well, we're going back into some quarantine now. The COVID-19 virus, which became the COVID-20 virus, and some are saying will become the COVID-21 virus, is coming back. There are more large numbers of people who are being infected, and while we seem to be having a better handle on it now and able to treat it, it's still among us, and it's still quite dangerous. And even the talking about further quarantine periods is driving some young people into great despair now. They've been cooped up for too long during 2020, and so have us adults. And indeed, there are these same statistics that apply to the teens that I've been looking at, also to apply to adults in retirement and the over 55 age group. They're feeling pronounced periods of loneliness, and the loneliness is causing great anxiety. It's interrupting dramatically sleep patterns and eating patterns, hydration. It's having a major impact from the emotional level on outward into the physical level, and a lot of it is generated simply by fear. And being alone is not a pleasant prospect for a lot of people today. I've even heard some people say they used to love going to the grocery store, just going and seeing people and smiling and seeing people smile. Well, you don't do that anymore because everyone's got a mask. And so you can't see those important facial features that help us relate to others. And when we can't do that, we're even more isolated, even in the midst of people. And so this is a dangerous time for many of us, and we need to pay attention to that connection we have with God. That is truly the only thing that's going to get us through this. He's the only way we've gotten this far through it. He'll carry us through this election controversy for however long it goes. God never stops carrying us. Jesus never stops walking with us. But when we get in periods of despair that leads into loneliness, we tend to forget about that connection. We turn inward. I was reading an article just this morning that said that pronounced and prolonged periods of loneliness trigger in us the fight or flight syndrome, as though we are under threat. And indeed we are. It's the despair that is the biggest threat. It's the losing of our connection to God that is the biggest threat to us. When we turn our back on that connection to God and seek solace in other ways, we do tend to go into the dark areas of our minds and in our hearts and in our spirits. And we don't want to go there because evil waits for us there. And so I want to just share with you just briefly today an incredible psalm that I read this morning, Psalm 142. And I just want to say a word about it. This psalm in its title in the Hebrew language says it was when David was in a cave. King David wrote this as he was in a cave. And so we read about that in 1 Samuel 22 and 21. David was in a civil war against King Saul at the time in 1 Samuel 21 and 22. And David was chased into the Philistine territory of Gath, where he met with the rulers of Gath and was actually seeking help. And they recognized him and said, wait a minute, isn't this David? The one that they used to say, Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000s? And David realized that he was in a bind even at the king of Gath's court. So he pretended to be insane, and they drove him out. David went from there after pretending to be insane in order to save his life into the cave at Adullam, where he spent some very close face time with God. And he just happens to have written about it to us in Psalm 142. And so I want to just read this very short psalm. David had fled for his life. First to the king of Gath, he pretended to be insane, and he fled to the cave at Adullam. And so here's what he said. It's called a Maskil of David, a psalm, a proverb of David. And he says this. There are two things that happen in this psalm. He cries aloud in despair. And the second thing is he recognizes that his hope is in God. So is ours. I cry aloud to the Lord. I lift up my voice to the Lord for mercy. I pour out my complaint before him. Before him I tell my trouble. When my spirit grows faint within me, it is you who know my way. In the path where I walk, men have hidden a snare for me. Look to my right and see. No one is concerned for me. I have no refuge. No one cares for my life. I cry to you, O Lord, I say, you are my refuge, my portion in the land of the living. Listen to my cry, for I am in desperate need. Rescue me from those who pursue me, for they are too strong for me. Set me free from my prison, that I may praise your name. Then the righteous will gather about me because of your goodness to me. God is so good to us. We need to stay connected to him. My word of hope is that connection is crystal clear. Simply go into your mind and have a conversation with God. He's there. He knows your thoughts. And remember that he loves you and has not forsaken you. And God willing, I will see you right here again tomorrow. God bless you.